Okay. And the good part is we don't have that much time, so I just need to introduce it enough so we can do more with it next class, okay? Quick housekeeping. If you look at the backboard, it looks like we have a test next Friday. However, it's a special schedule day, so I'll probably move it to that Monday the 10th. So you will not do a quiz or a test next week, but Monday the 10th, we are taking a test on Monday. So be ready to go. I'll get these quizzes back to you next week so you can use them to study. Graphing is kind of the last thing that's going to be on this chapter test. And I've got today, I've got Monday and Tuesday, I think, still left to finish this. So we still have 2.5 days-ish to finish this. Then we'll review and then we'll be about ready for that test. So we've done period, we did amplitude, right? What's my normal amplitude? If I just gave you like sine of X, what would my amplitude be there? Nope, amplitude. Would my amplitude be like normal? What'd you say? 2. No. 1. Amplitude's normally 1. What about my period? What's my period normally? That's 2 pi. Good. So normally my height is from the middle, up 1, down 1 from the middle. Normally my period, normally the length it takes me to get a sine or cosine graphed in is pi over, or 2 pi. We talked about changing those the other day. Now we're going to talk about something called phase shifts and vertical shifts. Now this phase shift is basically a horizontal shift, and sometimes I'll call it that, but I want to use the word phase a little bit better because that's kind of implying the cyclicalness, the period of all of this. So we're shifting the phase. We're starting the phase at a different point, okay? This phase shift is how we move left and right. And the most basic way of saying it is that you set your parentheses around X equal to 0. That's not it today.
30.
Unfortunately, yeah, 50 more minutes. Fortunate for me, unfortunate for you. You guys are like, please let us leave. Like, I already know this is going to be tough. Okay, so basically we're setting that parentheses equal to 0. I'm going to talk about the vertical shift today. We won't really do it, but that just moves it up and down. And it's just the D unit. So whatever is being attached to the end, I move up or down 2 or 3 or 1 or a half. Yeah, Amelia. That's just like semicolon. Oh, so it's like a semicolon, and then I said set the parentheses equal to 0. Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
What's the D?
The D is, you look at all those formulas above. Do you see how all those formulas have D's at the end? That's how many units you would move up or down. Yeah, very good. And to decide how far up or down we're moving, we're using our amplitude. Again, we will probably not have time to do one of those today, but I wanted to introduce that because the vertical shift is one of the easier things, and it's going to be the last thing we tack on. Okay. The phase shifts are a little bit tougher. That's why I wanted to get a little bit of a head start on them, okay? So we're going to jump down, and on letter F, that's the one we left off of last time. And the reason we did is because now I have something inside here that is with my X. That's affecting if we're moving left or right. Okay, let's do the things we already know first. Tell me amplitude, tell me period. Amplitude is 3, period is 2 pi divided by 2. So my period is pi. I have to get my whole sine curve done in pi units. That's only. So it's a little scrunched up. Now, the last thing we're gonna talk about is that phase shift. And I just told you a second ago, we set that denominator equal, or sorry, not the denominator, the parentheses equal to 0. So I'm doing X minus pi over 4 equals 0. Now, the more of these we do, you probably won't physically set it equal to 0. You'll probably just do it in your head because that means X is going to be pi over 4. And since it's positive, are we going to move right or left? Right. When it's inside the parentheses, we do opposite of what it is, but since I've moved it out, we're going to move right. So we're going to move right, pi over 4. Do you remember what angles we used the last class? What were the 5 angles that we always started with? We started with 0, and then we looked at
1, 0. No.
Pi over 2. Good. And then what was the other?
At the end. And then pi over 3.
3 pi over 2, and then 2 pi. And I help myself remember that because 2 pi is what my period is based on. And if you remember last class when I said, hey, when we adjust our period, we're going to take all of our angles and divide it by 2 because that's what we did to get our new period. Are you guys okay with that?
Yep.
We're going to do that same idea here. We're going to take our angle, divide by 2. But then I'm also going to do my phase shift to it. I'm also going to add pi over 4 to it. Okay. I'm about to teach you 2 different ways of doing it. And after I teach you both ways, we'll decide which one we like better. But the way that I'm going to do it to start is I'm literally going to take all 5 of these angles, divide them by 2, add pi over 4. Okay. So we'll start with 0. 0 is easy to do in our head. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And what's 0 plus pi over 4?
4.
Pi over 4. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put pi over 4 on my graph. Now I've graphed this before, so I know this is a good place to put it, and it's going to really show my shrink of my.
Yes, it's a good day, how can anything be wrong? Good day from morning till night.
Okay. You do want your calculators for this next step, so get your calculators out.
Everything's a game, nothing to lose.
Like, is no one in the front office just to like turn this off?
Tonight.
Oh, there we go. 20 minutes later.
Great song.
Great song. Great song. What a great way to start the day.
Great.
I hope that plays at the real passing period, right?
Yeah, right?
Okay. All right, so we just did 0 divided by 2 plus pi over 4. Now, you probably are already looking at this and you're like, okay, I have to do pi over 2 divided by 2 and then plus pi over 4. Is anybody already panicked to do that? Yeah? If you aren't, great, do it by hand. If you are a little panicked, we can do it in the calculator. Just pretend those pi's don't exist. So I'm essentially doing 1/2 divided by 2 plus 1/4, okay? I can do that in my calculator. 1/2 divided by 2 plus 1 divided by 4. Now, it's going to give me a decimal. I don't want a decimal, I want a fraction. So you could easily hit your math fraction button, and that tells me that's 1/2. So when I do pi over 2 divided by 2 plus 1/4, I get pi over 2. Let's do the same thing with pi. Pi divided by 2, well, that's just going to be 1/2 pi, so 1/2. And then I can add 1/4 to that. And again, these ones that we're doing right now, you could probably do in your head. 1/2 plus 1/4 is going to be 3/4. I know that. If you don't, though, that's why I'm reminding you got your fun calculators. The next one, 3 pi over 2 divided by 2 plus pi over 4. Okay, sounds crazy, but we'll just do 3 divided by 2 divided by 2 again plus 1/4. Oh, and then I don't even have to make that a fraction. It's already just 1. So I'm going to be at pi. And then my last one is going to be 2 pi divided by 2, which will just be 1 pi, 1 plus 1/4. And that gives me 1.25, which is 5/4. The labeling is super important here. That's why we're going over all of these steps, because I need to see every single label of every angle. Now, instead of starting at 0, we had to move right pi over 4. So I'm starting at pi over 4. So if you like kind of your little barrier, draw that. I'm not ending at pi. I'm ending at pi plus pi over 4, which is at that 5 pi over 4. So I have from pi over 4 to 5 pi over 4 to do my whole sign. And then I can't forget my amplitude. I can go as high as 3 and as low as -3. And again, I draw that little box so that I know that sign has to take up that whole box. Does sign start in the middle, on top, or on bottom? In the middle. And then normal sign, does it go up or does it go down to start? Up, good. So I go middle, I go up, I go middle, I go down, and then I go middle again. That pattern of sign points we should have memorized by this point.
By this interruption, I apologize. The bells were off. They are fixed now. Activity will end at 9:30. Thank you.
Perfect, okay. So again, this one we did our angle divided by 2, and then we added our our phase shift, okay? That's it, that's my whole graph, it looks perfect. Yeah, Carson,
It's graphic,
yes,
not going up and down. You can't skip, right? And then once it hits that thing, you go back.
I'll go back down. Mhm,
And then all the way to the bottom and go back.
mhm. So the way sine always goes is go middle to the highest, middle to the lowest, middle. That's just the pattern that the sine goes in. Now we're gonna do a cosine one, so that's gonna be a little bit different. I'm gonna teach you another way to think about your angles here. So if you didn't really like what I did there, well, I'll teach you another way here. And I am not gonna use this graph because I just don't want to. So I'm gonna do some work up here, but I'm gonna give myself room to graph down here at the bottom. Remember yesterday or last class, I made us just like draw our own grid. That's sometimes even easier. So when in doubt, if it's a little weird on that, I'm gonna let us draw our own, or I'll draw like a very generic, blank, vague one like this, and then you can label it how you want. Okay. With letter G now, what's my amplitude? 1/5. What's my period gonna be? Normally it's 2 pi divided by b. What's my b here? Good. What's 2 pi divided by 1/2? 4 pi. When you divide by a fraction, remember we've done a lot of these, we multiply by the reciprocal, so I get 4 pi. And then now I got to do my phase shift. You can set your x plus pi over 8 equal to 0. Or you can just know I'm going to have to minus that pi over 8 from both sides. So am I going to go right or left? And how much? Good. We're going to go left pi over 8. Okay. With just that information, I can start setting up my graph, right? I know I'm not starting at 0 anymore. I'm starting left pi over 8. So I've got to go to negative pi over 8 to start. That's my first point. And then I get to go as high as 1/5, and I get to go as low as negative 1/5. So that's my bottom and my top of my graph. The hardest part now is my other angles. You can do the same thing that we were doing before. In this case, I would do my angle, and instead of dividing it, since I normally had pi or 2 pi, and now I have 4 pi, I would do 2 times theta, and then I would minus pi over 8. So you could do that for all your angles like we just did. 0, pi over 2 pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. However, I already showed you that, so let me show you another one in case this makes you happier, okay? We know that there are 5 like important points, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. So I start at that pi over 8, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. In between those ticks, there are 5 ticks, but there is 4 spaces in between them. 1, 2, 3, 4. What Miss Ludington does, and this works for her, and my kids like this yesterday too, is she takes the period, her new period, and divides it by 4 to say, okay, what's the distance between each tick mark? So my period here is 4 pi, and I'm going to divide it by 4. So it's pi units between each tick mark. True, but we have to start at negative pi over 8. So we're going to take our starting angle, which is negative pi over 8, and we're going to add it to pi each time. Because, and I got that because 4 pi divided by 4 is just pi. Yes, Amelia. Great question. It's always divided by 4. So you take whatever your new period is and divide by 4. Okay. And that you can just use the angle that you just got. So we have negative pi over 8. We're going to add that to pi. We can do that in the calculator. Negative 1/8 plus 1. Make that a fraction. Uh-oh, I got to see an ad.
I never get it.
Yeah, I apparently always get that.
Yeah, like I never get them.
It's so embarrassing when it's on like the main screen and I can't like skip past it. So we just have to like sit and watch this weird Grammarly ad. And like you guys like
It's between actually me and a
one's a noun, one's a verb.
Yeah, I never know.
A's a verb.
A is a verb.
A's a verb. Think
Uh-huh.
about action.
every time.
Well, just think
Yeah,
about
you're wrong.
just think about action.
Yeah.
effect. A If you're using it as a verb,
And then if it's like a cause and effect,
that's a noun.
it's an E, yeah, that's a noun.
Nobody knows. You're better off using A than E. Like, okay.
All right, so then my first tick after negative pi over 8 is gonna be 7 pi over 8. My other class really like this because now I use that number and I'm just gonna keep adding pi to it. So now I'm gonna take my number and I'm just gonna say plus 1. Plus 1 fraction. 15 pi over 8. Plus 1, make a fraction. 23 pi over 8. And then plus 1, and I get 31 pi over 8. Okay, and that's where I'm ending. Now, you probably already had those tick marks, and you probably could have already graphed your cosine, but I needed all those angles labeled. So now we're going to graph our normal cosine from here. Yeah, Carson?
You just add 8 to the top. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Does that work every
Yeah.
time?
Because pi is the same thing as 8 pi over 8.
Yeah, so whatever the denominator is with the,
Well, that's because
base.
because of the way my pi was, because I'm
Yeah.
adding, there's pi units between each one. So yep, you could do that.
Okay.
All right, so cosine, does that start high, medium, low? High, then where does it go? And then where does it go? And then back to the middle and then back to the top.
Horseshoe.
Little cold horseshoe. All right,
It's cosine, it's a horseshoe.
always a horseshoe. If it's negative cosine, it's a flipped horseshoe.
And we're not gonna have to do, on the test, we're gonna do both sides.
Nope, you'll have one period to do. All right, I wanted to introduce the horizontal shift. We're gonna do more of that. We're a couple problems behind alpha, but we'll be fine. We still have 2 more class periods, and I'm not assigning 4-4. If you want to start it, go for it, but I'm not assigning homework. I'll see you guys Monday.